pahayag ni Badoy at kanila itong aaksyonan.
Kasunod dito ng viral niyang Facebook post laban kay Manila RTC Judge Marlon Magdoza Malaga.
There's no need to react about the decision since there is a different regime now, a different legal regime, which is the Anti-Terrorism Act. So we let the law take its course and allow the judiciary to exercise its full mandate.
The Supreme Court has issued a stern warning against threatening members of the judiciary. That's after former NTF-ELCAC spokesperson Lorraine Badoy a serial red tagger to many, posted on Facebook a hypothetical statement about killing a judge. She later denied that post. Of course, there were screenshots we discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Roby Alampay. Kasama ko po sa studio Ed Lingao of One News. And kasama natin online, Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. And she will be joining us in a bit later on. Ed, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Balita.
Well, siyempre, unang-una yung banta ng Supreme Court dun sa mga nagre-red tag. A certain Lorraine Badoy.
A certain Lorraine Badoy. Kilala mo ba yun?
Oo, cooperate natin.
Pero I mean, yung usapin nito, I mean, one of the things I'm curious for is, kagaya nga nasabi sa intro, serial red tagger to. Diba? And of course, it's not only the judiciary, it's not only lawyers.
Although she refuses to call it red tagging,
yes.
many other NTF people.
But now, that's what I'm curious about. Diba? One is acknowledging the act is one thing, and that's by the Supreme Court. And then I think they even, parang that was even acknowledged. The very act of red tagging was in fact acknowledged. I'm wondering beyond this, what are the implications for a lot of the initiatives to try to legislate red tagging out of reality in the Philippines?
Well, legislation is one thing. That's going to be a pretty tough. That's going to be a pretty tough proposal. Although on the other hand, you have very strong words from the Supreme Court about what happened, about the act. Of course, the next question is, so what do you do about it? Because until anybody complains or files a complaint or a court issues a contempt case, a contempt charge, nothing happens. It's just babala.
Pero to that point nga, like we said, I mean, the reason I mentioned legislation is because there have been proposals to at least, one, start to define. If you could define it, maybe you can try to attack the problem.
Pero pa lang, it goes into semantics. I mean, you know how it is. One side calls it truth tagging.
But those are the kinds of things precisely that we want to get into beyond this whole thing with Lorraine Badoy. Anong implications nito for all the rest of us? We speak to our first guest after a short break. Keep it right here on One News. Several lawyers, groups, and organizations are rallying behind Manila RTC Judge Marlo Magdoza Malagar. That's after she was red-tagged by former NTF-ELCAC spokesperson Lorraine Badoy in a Facebook post. Even the Supreme Court has stepped in. Let's talk about this some more with Integrated Bar of the Philippines President Bert Estrada. Welcome to the Chief's Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you po. Magandang gabi
Good evening, sir.
Sa inyong dalawa. Magandang gabi sa ating mga nanonood sa programang The Chiefs.
Magandang gabi po. And, pagka nagre-red tag and Lorraine Badoy is in this mode, I mean, she's gotten the attention of social media and netizens from various sectors, di ba? Hindi lang judiciary, hindi lang mga abogado, human rights workers, activists, media, and so on. Pero yung kanina, napansin ko rin, a lot of lawyers were really, posting. I mean, how significant was this? I mean, first of all, put this in context as only lawyers could. The fact that the Supreme Court itself came out with a statement and issued this stern warning, what does it mean?
It means that will not allow the continuous attack and disparaging of the independence and the integrity of our courts and our judicial system. Because we know that this is an important element of a democratic society. And so we see here the legal community and the court itself no longer tolerating any of these kinds of attack, as it redounds also to the detriment of society as a whole if the independence and integrity of our judicial system is disparaged.
Let me fast forward to one of the things that I want to discuss, because for a lot of people, di ba, parang ang daming tao nagsasabi, itong red tagging, this is not just words. Ironically, once we get into it, people are having a hard time defining it. But let's now, at this point, let's all agree, we know it when we see it, di ba? But a lot of people, not just the judiciary, are saying na pati kami napipiligro. In fact, marami nang namatay dahil sa red tagging. Marami nang nalagay sa alanganin at namiligro dahil sa red tagging. What does this mean for all the rest of us, other than members of the judiciary? Does this signal something along the larger movement that something has to be done for everyone, against everybody who uses red tagging?
Well, it concerns everyone because we know for a fact that there has been many attacks, and many have died even due to being just implicated as supporting or belonging to a certain group, or the Reds. That's why it's red tagging. And so it is very dangerous if we allow such unbridled and capricious tagging by certain person of belonging to a certain group. Not only does it perhaps become libelous, but it does pose as a threat to the life of those that are red tagged. And so it is a concern for everyone because not just the lawyers or our judges, as you mentioned earlier, anyone can be a target if it is allowed to go on like this.
But attorney, there are those who say na in this particular case, si former Usec Badoy wais. What she did was use a hypothetical kasi she started off by saying, what if I kill a judge and so on down the line. So there are those who say na with that kind of wording, it becomes a hypothetical. It is not exactly a threat to the life of a particular judge. Does that hold any water, or is that not a valid argument?
I personally feel that such statement can still be considered as contemptuous, as it can be readily identifiable as to what she's pertaining to, or who she's pertaining to. And because it was stated just immediately after the decision was made public, then it can be deduced that she was pertaining to the decision made by Judge Alagar. And in one of the cases, as I mentioned in the statement that the IBP has published, in the case of Jurado, that the person there was even a journalist. And in some of the instances, when he published certain utterances or statements, it was also in a like manner, no? That it's not directly mentioning names or being it is clear that he was attacking the integrity of the courts and hence the integrity of the judicial system. And in that case, that person was held in contempt by the court.
Of course, we're saying red tagging because ang malaking konteksto dito was the judgment had something to do with the rejection of the judge to basically designate prescribe the CPP and PA as terrorist organizations. That's why we're saying red tagging. But the reality is that the innuendo against judges, human rights workers, journalists, civil society extend in various forms, 'di ba? Nung nakaraang administrasyon, tawagin kang protector ng drugs, 'di ba? In general, sabihin nila that you are, even the very benign suggestion that you are against this government and so on, 'di ba? But what does this Supreme Court reminder and stern warning, what latitude might it have, regardless of however a threat is framed?
I think it really emphasizes the paramount importance of preserving the integrity and independence of the court. And in the past, we have seen our judges and even the court really try to not be in making public statements. But I think it has come to a point really that these kinds of attack has become more rampant, and believe that the court has seen the importance of preserving its own integrity. And this is why the IBP and all the lawyers as officers of the court
Attorney, are you there?
Sir, but let me push
Yes,
it.
po.
Let me push it a little bit more. So what should or could we expect from the court or from any group with regard to this case with former Usec Lorraine Badoy? I mean, is this a warning for future threats or future veiled threats against other groups or other people, or is this basically an actionable event?
Well, based on the resolution issued by the court earlier, that it has tackled already and discussed this matter.
Yes, sir. Motu proprio.
I personally believe that this motu proprio, taking cognizance of this instance, might be a court might find or conduct a proceeding whether or not it is contemptuous. No, the statement of Badoy is contemptuous, but also, as mentioned in the second part of that resolution, it serves as a warning also to other people that this is not tolerable. This is not part of one's freedom of speech, and this is dangerous. It does not only endanger one individual judge, it endangers the entire judicial system and society as a whole.
Attorney, you're president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. Atras ako ng konti. You have a view of your community and of the legal profession as well as the judiciary. Obviously, itong pinag-uusapan natin did not come out of nowhere. Lorraine Badoy did not come out of nowhere. There's a whole history there. And for that matter, a whole history over the course of the last 6 years under the Duterte administration. Could you give us a briefer and an update on what exactly happened to the legal profession, to the judiciary over the past 6 years, at a time when a lot of officers of the court and a lot of lawyers were in fact being openly threatened, and there was a lot of contempt coming from government itself?
Well, in the last 6 years, we have seen, and in many instances, the IBP has released statements and made also media briefers that in the last 6 years, there has been more attacks on lawyers than compared to the last 5 administrations. So that is a matter of fact. That is recorded. There has been more lawyers killed in the last 6 years, and many of those incidents, I believe, also involved not only those that were pursued or tagged to be belonging to certain group, but also those that were, as you mentioned earlier, being supporters or cuddlers of drugs operation. So I think it's also high time, really, and this resolution of the Supreme Court, and you can see all the different organizations of the retired judges, the Judges Association, the IBP, even law faculties have come together and have spoken out, and that this is too much, and we cannot tolerate these kinds of attacks anymore, lest it will endanger even more lives, not just from the legal profession, but from more Filipinos.
Attorney, I'm reading the press release issued by the Supreme Court PIO today, and I'm trying to see exactly what the press release means. Kasi the first part says nga that the Supreme Court en banc tackled the possible actions motu proprio regarding statements of former Usec Lorraine Badoy. And then the second part, as you said, is a warning against those who, I suppose, will make these actions in the future. But the first part, I suppose, tell me if I'm getting this right, they're already discussing possible actions against Usec Badoy. Would that be a fair assessment of the first part of the statement?
I think it's difficult to preempt, but based a literal reading of the resolution is that the court has already discussed and tackled this particular incident, because it specifically mentions the person of former Usec Badoy and of that statement. So it's possible that the court, having taken motu proprio cognizance, and because it is within its prerogative, jurisprudence says it's not only a prerogative of the court, but its duty to preserve its independence and integrity, and so it can conduct motu proprio proceedings on these certain cases pertaining to contempt of court.
Yeah, but to that point, Attorney, balikan ko lang yung unang tanong ko. Malinaw that this is about the court. It is about the judiciary, the Supreme Court defending the judiciary. That's very clear. I'm just wondering, nonetheless, that you have a baseline here, di ba? The baseline is however you want to define what Lorraine Badoy did and said. And then you have the threatened action. And basically that, and it says that inciting violence through whatever you would call that act, and let's call it words, diba? Inciting violence with words through social media and other means that endanger the lives of judges and their families. Will not tolerate that. No? And that is going to be actionable. But if you took away the word judges and basically said that threaten the lives of people, I guess my question is, does this also help to draw a line in the sand for other people of other sectors who say that, we're not the judiciary, but we've been saying this all along, and we do want this acted upon, and we do want to take action against a person for essentially the same thing that Lorraine Badoy did. The only difference is that I'm not a judge. Does this somehow, coming from the Supreme Court, does this somehow draw a line in the sand or help us to define how we are going to take action against people who are essentially attacking us the same way?
Yes, I think it does, because especially now, though, and then in the past couple of years, we have seen how information and how certain influencers and bloggers have tried to control the narrative and control information that goes to people, and that in the past it has always been said that the right to freedom of expression is one of the most closely guarded civil liberty, and rightly so. But the Supreme Court, in that case I mentioned also earlier, has highlighted that, as we all know, no right is absolute. And so for private persons also, when they are subject to certain utterances, publications, especially in social media, when they find themselves in the opposite side of the fence of these so-called influencers, that they can take action against statements or accusations against them, because this kind of speech is not protected by law when it causes harm already to other people. And so this is not only for judges and lawyers and journalists, only that in this case there is one paramount public interest other than one's private interest of protecting your reputation. Here, the paramount public interest is for judicial system. But for private people, that is also a very important private interest, that we protect our reputation, even our personal safety. And so we should not just tolerate these kinds of statements when they attack us with falsehood and baseless accusations that might cause our harm to us.
Okay, but Attorney, just to acknowledge as well the other side of that, we also don't want to be blind about that. If it does eventually help to lead society into some kind of policy that affects everybody, how do we also guard against, finding ourselves on a slippery slope? This was intended for judges. We are acknowledging this might as well be used by other sectors to defend themselves. But given, for example, now Lorraine Badoy is a private citizen, as Ed said, she does try to hide behind the hypothetical nature or the word if. But how do we also guard against the slippery slope here?
Well, in that same Murado case, the Supreme Court mentioned that this is not a zero-sum game. It's not between the right to self-expression or freedom of the press as against the interest of preserving the integrity of the judicial system, or in the case of protecting private interest in cases of libel. Well, as we always know, that the right to the freedom of expression and freedom of the press is also one of the most closely guarded right, but it redounds to what we know as Article 19 of the Civil Code, or the abuse of and so there will always be a case wherein there might appear that there has to be a balancing act between one's personal liberty of expressing, of freedom of expression, but there will also be other public interests and even private interests that has to be taken into account. And if one exercises his right with giving justice to everyone in good faith, then I do not think that they will be in danger of being prosecuted. And so, as you mentioned, that there might be a slippery slope that other people might this time be prosecuted for expressing their thoughts.
Yes, sir.
So,
But just to follow up on Roby's earlier question, here kasi we're talking about a statement from the Supreme Court warning people against issuing threats to members of the judiciary and their families, and stating that you may be held in contempt of court. So that's pretty clear.
Yes.
But when it comes to private citizens and when they are faced with similar kinds of occurrences, incidents, or allegations, what is their recourse? Anong pwede nilang gawin? Kasi, of course, iba naman yung contempt of court. Contempt of court is for example, courts and judges. But for private citizens, if, for example, hypothetically, if somebody tells Roby, what if I kill you and claim that I am immune from suit because I did it out of my political ideology? So what is Roby's recourse? And what is his recourse vis-a-vis what the court said today? Meron ho bang may nagbago ho ba?
Well, private persons are subjected to also baseless accusations or criminal or even civil cases in court to vindicate the violation of their right. And much more when there's already a threat of bodily harm. So they have the remedy to go to court for those threats and file criminal charges as well.
Okay. Attorney Bert Estrada, sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat din po.
Mr. Estrada, of course, is president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. And we'll start up another conversation after the break. Stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
The health department logged over 17,800 additional COVID-19 infections from September 19 to 25, the highest weekly figure in 4 weeks.
Malayo pa bago tuluyang ideklarang tapos na ang COVID-19 pandemic. Yan ang bagong pahayag ng World Health Organization.
We all need hope that we can and we will get to the end of the tunnel and put the pandemic behind us. But we're not there yet. We're still in the tunnel, and we will only get to the end by focusing on the path ahead and by moving forward with purpose and care.
The health department records a 22% increase in the number of COVID cases in the country compared to last week's. Let's bring in the health department's officer in charge, Usec Maria Rosario Vergeire. Ma'am, thank you for joining us and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Magandang gabi po.
Evening po, magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Magandang gabi po. At also bringing in Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, who comes to us live from the port area in Manila. Ami, ibato ko muna sa yung first question.
Good evening, everyone. Usec, as the introduction said, na 22% increase nationwide. And Octa also recorded doubling of cases in Metro Manila. Ano kaya ang dahilan nito? Yung masking ba to? Well, a lot of things have happened. Pero what can you say is the main reason?
Yes, ma'am. No? So as we have explained, ang isang sakit po kasi would always have different contributing factors. There are factors for individuals, meron po dun sa mismong virus o yung pathogen, tas yung environment. So ngayon, pag pinag-usapan po natin yung optional masking natin, this would be part of the individual's component or factor. And we also have factors in the environment as well. So pag tinignan ho natin ang sitwasyon natin ngayon, aside from this behavior, kung ikaw ay magmamask o hindi sa outdoors, meron ho tayong increased mobility. This started off with noon pa hong first quarter of the year, pataas na ng pataas ang mobility. Lalo na ho ngayon na nagbukas na ng mga sektor at saka nag-face-to-face classes na, talaga hong umakyat na ho talaga yung mobility ng population natin. Aside from that, of course, we know that we have a transmissible variant, and that is that side from the pathogen side. So, contributing factors, lahat nagsasama-sama, we cannot say exactly that this is just because of the optional masking. These would be contributing factors na lahat po yan ay kinokonsidera natin.
So how bad can it be kaya? And how worried should we be? Kasi sabi nila, hindi naman daw na hospital yung mga nai-infect. But on the other hand, yung mga vulnerable, hindi ba? Well, we are still reporting deaths and we have long COVID, we have debilitation. How worried should we be?
Not so much to be worried about, but we need to be cautious and vigilant. Kaya nga po dun sa polisiya na pinalabas natin regarding optional masking, specific po tayo and we emphasize that it will be done in low-risk settings and among low-risk individuals. So ibig sabihin, kapag ikaw ay isang taong vulnerable, like matanda ka o kaya may comorbidity ka, o kaya pumapasok ka sa eskwelahan or you ride the public transport, kahit nasa labas ka, you should always wear your mask. Tapos kailangan ng tao, alam nila, pag pupunta sila sa mataong lugar, kailangan suot-suot mo yung mask kahit nasa labas ka. So these were part of the policy that we have issued. So kailangan lang po talaga better enforcement. Local government should be able to monitor ito pong ating paglabas ng mga tao. Kung walang mask ang mga tao at sila ay vulnerable, they should advise these people to wear their mask.
Ma'am, of course, a significant increase in the number of new cases would be a cause for concern. Pero sabi nga ng health officials, even in the past, the better metric would probably be yung hospitalization rate. How is that holding up? Are we seeing any significant increase in the hospitalization rate po?
Well, there are increases in certain hospitals in the country. Tama po kayo, yan po yung ating metric talaga na gusto natin pagtuunan ng pansin sa ngayon. Because expectedly, cases will be there. Magkakaroon tayong mga kaso, maaring tumaas, pero ang importante dapat, kakaunti lang ang severe at critical at hindi na-overwhelm yung ating mga ospital. That is the main goal. Because the virus is here to stay. So ngayon, pag tinignan ho natin ang mga hospitals natin, ang ating healthcare utilization po nationally is less than 50%, even in the National Capital Region. But we are closely monitoring some hospitals in these different areas kung saan nakikita natin medyo may pagtaas po ang ating pagkaka-hospital.
Ma'am, yung mga pagtaas po, are they in any way significant or are they just quick and short movements of the numbers?
Well, it depends. For example, there would be hospitals that have really low number of beds for ICU, for example. Kaya 2, 3, nagkakaroon na ng 100%. It's a play of numbers. Pero meron naman talagang ospital na malaki na yung ospital, marami ng kama, pero marami pa rin nasa ward nila. So ito po yung mga binabantayan natin sa ngayon.
Ma'am, how does this all square with, yung mga tao hanggang ngayon kumakapit pa rin sa sinabi ng WHO na we see the light at the end of the tunnel and so on, or that the end is in sight. What's important to remind people, and how do we reconcile what we're hearing and what we're seeing?
I think a lot of people misinterpreted what the WHO has pronounced. Kasi dun sa buong article ng WHO, bagamat sinabi niya malapit na, nakikita na natin yung light sa end ng tunnel na yon, pero sinabi niya na kailangan hindi tayo complacent kasi wala pa tayo doon. Kailangan we should further prepare our systems. Kaya nga sabi, continue testing, continue the vaccination, continue the minimum public health standards, because kailangan nandiyan lahat yung safeguards na yan before we can really reach that end na sinasabi natin. As long as and until we can reach this immunity in the population, I don't think that any country in the world will have this kind of stable situation. So kailangan nga sundin natin yung sinabi nila ng mga 6 na mga measures na kailangan ginagawa pa rin ng countries up to now so that all of the countries will reach that end.
Usec, pag na-sustain tong increase ng cases, how will it impact the full face-to-face classes na scheduled by November?
Unang-una po, ma'am, as we have said, the most important thing that we are monitoring right now would not be the cases that are increasing, but we are closely monitoring the severe and the critical. So if most of the cases are still mild, asymptomatic, moderate, iyan po ay kaya pa ng ating sistema, and there is no reason for us to really close our schools. Hindi pwedeng magbubukas, magsasara, magbubukas, magsasara. We need to all live with this virus. Kailangan lang talaga we should improve on our coverage for vaccination so that a lot of people will have that immunity at mas mapuputol po natin yung transmission and progression to severe and critical cases.
Speaking of which,
pero madili kaya yung full in-person classes? Kasi ngayon naman hybrid naman ngayon. Is there a possibility na madidelay?
Well, if we see that really this number of cases will continue to rise and we can see that a lot of people or a number of people will be affected, especially those vulnerable and requiring hospitalization and having severe and critical, baka magrekomenda po tayo sa IATF and to the Office of the President. But for now, we don't see any reason for us to delay the opening of our schools or full implementation of this face-to-face.
But you mentioned coverage po. Kamusta nga po ba ang uptake natin ng mga bakuna? Lalo-lalo na yung booster shots, lalo-lalo na sa mga vulnerable population, gaya na nabanggit nyo.
Well, it's still very slow, unfortunately. It's sad to say that intensive efforts are being done on the ground. Nakikita ho natin lahat ng local governments pouring all their efforts, pero talaga hong ang bagal talaga ng ating coverage, yung pagtaas po ng numero ng nababakunahan natin. So we are trying to really intensify. Meron tayong week-long vaccination ngayon. Kahapon po nag-suspend tayo because of the typhoon. But in Visayas and Mindanao, we were able to give 66,000 plus individuals for their first booster shots. So hopefully in the coming days, mas tumaas pa ho itong coverage natin. We're trying to reach at least 30% na lang by October 8, and hopefully we achieve that.
Yung private hospitals, Usec, nagre-recommend sila to restore the mask mandates. Are you inclined to support that?
Well, for now, ma'am, as I've said, ito pong ating sitwasyon, expectedly cases will rise. Hindi po naman pwede na nagpapatupad tayo ng polisiya tapos pagkaraan ng ilang linggo at nakita nating tumataas ang kaso ay bibitiwan na natin agad. We need to further evaluate the situation. The Department of Health is on top of this. Pag nakita po natin that it's really affecting the vulnerable, mas marami ang nagiging severe and critical, pag nakita natin na hihirapan na yung mga ospital natin talaga, ay talagang magre-rekomenda po ang Department of Health para po ipabalik natin ang mask outdoors. Pero for now, I think that we are managing we should be able to further on, lahat tayo, magtulong-tulong lang, pataasin natin ang pagbabakuna para hindi ho tayo babalik dun sa dati. Kailangan moving forward na po tayo lahat dito and to live with the virus.
Pero ma'am, what would be the trigger for example, the DOH to decide to recommend bringing back the mask mandate? I'm not looking forward to that, of course. It's just that I'm just wondering kung what kind of numbers are we looking at, or what kind of numbers would possibly bring that about?
Well, right now, sir, our hospital admissions, no, the healthcare utilization, yun pong sa ating national, nasa less than 50%,
Opo.
NCR less than 50%. Pag nakita po natin yung H-curve natin, yung metric natin for hospitals, tumataas na and more than 50% na. And nakikita natin na hirap na yung mga ospital natin because of that. Diyan po tayo, magre-recommenda na po tayo talaga na baka ibabalik na muna natin yung ating mask outdoors.
In the meantime po, we're not seeing any nga sinabi natin, wala nang lockdown. Maybe we'll take on some policy that takes on a more granular approach to doing this. Are there, as we monitor LGUs and communities, have there been any particular communities or LGUs that have stood out as ito, baka kailangan natin tutukan to?
We are closely monitoring the National Capital Region. Here in the National Capital Region, we have seen that for these past weeks, nakita natin nag-shift to moderate ang kanilang case classification from just low. 14 po sa 17 cities and municipality here in NCR ay napunta na sa moderate risk. Ibig sabihin, tumataas po talaga yung kaso. Pero pag tinignan natin po yung kanilang healthcare utilization naman, meron lang po tayong binabantayan ng mga 4 po na city dito sa Metro Manila kung saan nakikita natin ang medyo pagtaas ng pagkaka-admit ng mga pasyente sa kanilang mga wards.
Ano pong mga cities to?
I am not at that point that we can disclose, no, because ang local governments po ay medyo nagkakaroon ng epekto sa kanila. So we do not disclose, but what I can tell you would be that we are closely monitoring. This is in NCR. Ito po yung malalaki natin mga lugar dito sa National Capital Region.
Usec, what's the latest on our efforts to procure the Omicron-specific vaccines?
We have already started our negotiations. Even last month pa po, we were able to talk to the manufacturers of Moderna already. Pina-finalize natin ngayon yung term sheet natin with them. No? The term sheet would mean na ilan yung kailangan mo, ano yung magiging arrangements natin. So naandyan na po yan. Nandun tayo sa point na yun with that specific manufacturer. Yun naman kung sa isa naman na tayo po ay continuing our dialogue with them. We have upcoming meeting this coming week because there are certain forms of non-disclosures na kailangan po for this specific manufacturer.
So at this point, would you know na kung ano yung magiging process? Halimbawa, nakaka-double booster na yung tao or single booster. Ano yung interval before you get this new generation vaccine?
Well, according to the evidences, the articles right now, it's about 2 to 3 months after you've received your last dose of COVID-19 vaccine, you can already receive this new generation vaccine.
Ma'am, pasok namin lahat doon. But just to follow up on Ami's question, I'm wondering what kind of a timetable you're looking at. I know you just talked about the discussions ongoing, pero do you expect the purchases to be resolved by before the year ends or by the fourth quarter?
We're looking at the first quarter of next year, not within this year, because these negotiations will take long, and then of course budget also. We need to prepare that for us to be able to procure. So matagal po itong mga negosasyon na ganito. Marami pong mga pinag-uusapan at saka maraming agreements na kailangan marating.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the other question, of course, I think would also be, given how we've seen yung hindi masyadong magandang uptick doon sa numbers ng boostering, what kind of numbers are you looking at purchasing for the Omicron booster?
Yes, sir. No? Kaya nga po ngayon dito sa Omicron booster or this new generation vaccines nga, hindi po kami mag-order ng entire eligible population because we know that the uptake has been low for these past months. So ang ino-order lang po namin muna would be enough for us to be able to vaccinate at that length of time na pag dumating sa atin, we can be able to prioritize already those who would want it pero hindi po yung entirety of the eligible population.
And would that follow yung dating priority listing, A1, A2, A3, A4? Ganun po?
Well, it depends, no? But I don't think that there would be any prioritization anymore. As long as you are willing, we will give you, as long as we can have that kind of budget, no? Pero sabi nga natin, we're not going to procure that entirety of the population. Kukuha muna po tayo ng by tranches so that hindi rin po nasasayang ang bakuna.
Pero madali naman po yun. I mean, assuming that the best case scenario actually comes up and, you know, let's say just saying that this is Omicron specific actually piques the interest of people and they are much more, much more willing to come forward for this. Kung sa kabilang scenario naman na maubos ka agad yun, hindi naman matagal yung lag to replenish.
Well, the negotiations include that, sir. So kami po ay kukuha in tranches. But what we would be ensuring through this kind of agreements would be that kapag ganito na lang yung stock level natin, we can already reorder.
Usec, ihabol ko lang yung problema ng monkeypox. Ano nang latest dun sa situation natin?
Our fourth case was the last case that we have detected here in the country. Na-discharge po siya from the facility last September 15. Ngayon po, nasa bahay siya kasi inaantay natin na mag-fall off yung scabs dun sa kanyang lesions. Meron pa po tayong isang naka-quarantine, yung nag-alaga sa kanya. Nasa bahay din lang po, home quarantine, wala naman pong simptomas. So tuloy-tuloy po ang surveillance natin. We had been testing laboratory test. Yun pong mga may suspect na tayo na may monkeypox. Wala naman pong nagte-test positive pa up to this time. Were able to sit down and meet and coordinate with these 3 manufacturers of vaccines. Sumulat na rin po tayo dito po sa ating presidente, no, kung sakasakali na magkaroon na ng desisyon so that we can identify funds for now so that we can procure at least 10,000 worth of monkeypox vaccines.
And hopefully that holds na hindi naman ganun kalaking problema sa atin yung monkeypox. Pero alam na natin, yung seasonally nagiging malaking problema rin talaga sa Pilipinas. So we'll take this let's continue to move out of COVID, talk about the other diseases and other problems we confront, lalong-lalo na tag-ulan, basa. I mean, what's the situation with dengue, waterborne, mosquito-borne diseases? How are they impacting our resources now?
Well, right now, ang dengue po, still at that level, wherein we are still detecting almost 20,000 cases for these past 2 weeks. Yun pa rin po yung malalaking areas natin like NCR, Region 3, Region 7. Ito po yung mga nangunguna na may matataas tayong mga kaso. Pag tinignan mo natin naman yung number of deaths for dengue, last August talagang we reached that peak of about 90 deaths per day for that month, no, the average. Pero ngayon po bumaba naman po, nasa 20 na lang for this September. Although this is still worrisome because may namamatay pa rin. So intensive po ang efforts natin through our local governments for cleaning the environment and also our hospital lanes, the fast lanes for dengue na andyan na po. We've already downloaded funds to our hospitals and to our CHDs or regional offices para po mas masuportahan natin sila for this. Leptospirosis also because nag-uulan po, flooding. So may mga kaso ho tayo. For this past 2 weeks, we have 425 cases. And this would include regions like NCR, Region 2, Region 1, Region 6. Diyan po natin nakikita yung medyo matataas na kaso. So nagre-remind lang po tayo sa ating mga kababayan ngayon pong tag-ulan, marami pong sakit na pwede tayong makuha like yung pong dengue dahil nag-iipon ng mga tubig at nagkakaroon ng breeding site ng lamok, yun pong leptospirosis if you wade in the flood, tsaka po yung mga gastrointestinal diseases. Kaya dapat alam natin ang preventive measures para makaiwas po tayo sa mga sakit na ito.
Yung leptospirosis na 425 cases, is that unusual? Yung number na yun o normal lang siya? Kasi sa nakita natin dito kay Typhoon Carding, parang hindi naman, saka itong mga recent monsoons, flooding, mukhang hindi pinapansin yung mga warning na huwag kayo lumusong sa baha, na walang protection. Is that an unusual number?
Oh, well, this 425, kapag ka rainy season po talaga, it's not really unusual. Actually, when you say that may threshold tayo, no? So yung threshold na yan yung pong mga past years na trend natin, same time of the year, makikita natin it's basically the same. Kaya nga po, pinag-iingat natin ang mga kababayan because we know that during these times of the year, talagang tumataas po ang mga kaso na to and kailangan talaga early detection. So pag may nararamdaman na, kapag kayo lumusong sa baha, pumunta na agad sa ating mga ospital para kayo po ay matugunan, no? Mabigyan ng karampatang lunas. Yun po namang mga nag-wade sa flood, meron po tayong prophylaxis kasi sa leptospirosis. So kung kayo po ay lumusong sa tubig baha at sa tingin nyo po ay madumi talaga yung nalusungan nyo, pumunta na po kayo sa ating mga health center. Libre po ang ating prophylactic medicines dyan, binibigay ng Department of Health.
Ma'am, before we let you go, let me squeeze in one more question, but I'll have to go back to the Omicron-specific vaccine. I think you mentioned a while ago na in the course of your negotiations na wala patang budget for these vaccines. I'm wondering if that's going to be a problem for next year, or is there a mechanism already in place for you to access funds when the time comes when you can already buy the vaccines?
Actually, it's not really not having the funds. We have right now funds which are part of our 2022 budget. Kailangan lamang po talaga na ma-realign natin para magamit doon. So may pera naman ho tayo para bumili nitong paunang mga bakunang ito. So that wouldn't be a problem for us for this initial tranche of vaccines.
Okay. Undersecretary Vergeire, ma'am, maraming salamat po.
Ma'am, salamat po. Ingat po.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Undersecretary Vergeire, also OIC of the Department of Health. And that's it for the chiefs. We hope it was discussed here. We'll keep the conversation going. Ako po si Roby Alampay.
I'm Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.